Hey guys, it's Josh, Jeff, and Terry, and today we're talking about apologetics. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi. So, apologetics. Sounds like a big fancy word. What exactly is apologetics, and why do we care about it?
Well, why are you apologizing to me?
Yeah, it's how you apologize.
I got a lot to be sorry for.
Somehow I have a feeling that's not what it means, though.
No, I don't think so. No.
You know, Josh, I knew what it meant because I heard people talk about an apologist speaker, and I heard what they were talking about. I had no idea where the word came from, though, and why it had anything to do with apologizing.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I remember the first time you guys actually introduced me to the topic of apologetics, and kind of like what Jeff was joking about. I was like,
Yeah.
What is this? The science of learning how to apologize, especially when we were talking about in context apologetics from a Christian standpoint of being able to defend one's faith, and I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, obviously, since then, much has been discussed, and I've been able to come to realize that apologetics is really just that. It's having a reason and logic behind defending really anything, but in this case, defending our Christian beliefs, and having way more than just fluff and more of happy thoughts and feelings and real concrete evidence that we can use to help share the reason for why we believe what we believe.
Yeah. So, Terry, one of the things that as you and I have had different conversations on this topic, you always come back to a certain Bible verse that you come back to pretty frequently. You want to share that with us?
Well, I assume you're talking about 1 Peter 3:15.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and before we do that, Jeff, what I was thinking was when we talk about apologetics, and this is just me being curious because I know I've looked this up before, but do you guys? And I'm not asking because I remember. I'm hoping you guys remember. Do you guys remember what the root of the word, where it comes from, or what? Because we know what it means, but why is it called an apologetic? It must be a Greek word or some sort of the etymology there must be. Like apologize must mean to defend in Greek or something like that.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. I want to say it is apology or apologia. Apologia means defend.
Yeah,
I'm trying to.
We sound pretty confident in that. We'll look it up. We'll put it on the put it on the screen to make sure. So, and since you got that up, why don't you just read the verse? I think we have it written up.
Want me to read the verse?
Yeah.
So it's 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts honor Christ as Lord as holy, always being prepared to give a defense to anyone who asks for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect.
Yep. So we are trying to keep this under like 10 or 12 minutes, right?
Yes.
What did you say, 8 minutes?
8 minutes.
So that verse you could do a couple hours on.
We could do a couple hours on that verse.
In fact, there's some great resources as we're talking through this, and you guys, I've promoted this to you guys a million times, as RZIM,
yes.
Zacharias Ministries Institute. They have fantastic resources, and one of the talks that I heard when I was listening to those guys is by Michael Ramsden called Conversational Apologetics, and he unpacks that verse, and I think it's a two-parter. It's probably 2 hours worth of. And it even sounds like in the talk, he's talking to people and it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So they're going through all this kind of crazy stuff. But there's one of the things that I remember in that talk that struck me, and I probably told you this guy before, but I didn't remember. But he talks about, it says, always have a reason, right? Always have a reason when people ask you about why you have joy or why you have hope. And he addresses that the first thing you need to think about is, are people asking you? Right?
That's a really solid point.
Because it was like, ooh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Because if people aren't asking you why you have that reason for hope, maybe you don't really understand what your reason for hope is, right? So, and then he talks obviously about, obviously apologetics stems from this concept of if we have the hope of Christ in us because he did everything he did for us, then there should be something about our lives. We should live our lives in a way that people think it's different, right? They might not know exactly what it is right off the bat, but that's why they're going to ask. So that's important to, I think, remember in our lives, is we need to be fostering an attitude and a knowledge that people are going to ask. Right?
Yeah. So, what are these reasons? what would you say the top things out there right now that you're seeing out there? What are those questions that we need to be able to give a reason to? So if we're defending our faith, what are we defending against?
Yeah, especially in today's culture where, it's...
I'm not sure why you kept such a straight face. I was trying to keep one myself. But.
I know. So I was staring at you to see if I can make you laugh. Anyway.
This is all the time, folks. All the time.
Yeah. What was I asking?
You were talking. You weren't asking, you were explaining. You were answering all the questions.
Right.
So.
Oh, yes. In today's culture, there's almost this maybe I'm generalizing too much, but it seems to me like it's just expected if you say that you're a Christian or that you have a belief or a belief that you would identify as being Christian, that you don't really have a good, solid, scientifically sound reason for why you believe in that. And I think to Jeff's point, some of those questions that are raised are, well, how do you know the Bible's true? Or, why do you believe there's God in just to begin with? Like, what proof is there? I mean, those are some of the more big, weighty type of questions, but those are some of the questions that are starting to get more and more common. And I think they're not just being asked of, the adults of the world. I mean, our young children are being asked these questions as a means of even getting them to question why they believe, so that they might be won to a different idea.
Yeah, can you reconcile science and the Bible?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that our kids have to deal with daily.
Well, and the standard thought right now is, no, science is science and religion is religion, and they have no part with one another. That's the idea that's being permeated, and yet there's plenty of evidence that we should be able to defend that helps to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you mentioned kids and the stuff they deal with, and sometimes it's the adults, the Christian adults, that are actually planting those questions in the kids' heads. Like, every parent that has a nursery, a bunch of them are set up with Noah's Ark motif, right? And so on the wall you'll see an ark with animals' heads, barely sticking out, right? Or shoving out, bursting at the seams, and which is fine and great, but and that's just planting in a seed inside of kids' head. At some point, I know I did this. You just start asking questions about how could every single kind of animal be on that ark. It's kind of weird to think about, right? And I don't know if that's having an analytical mind. I'm sure there's personalities out there that never think about that stuff, but I did, and I think that's when you're talking about what are we defending, everything, right? We're defending everything, and especially in today's culture, with the advent of media being able to be broadcast around the world instantaneously, I think there is a need to answer these questions. And we're not here to answer every single question. We're just here to talk about it, because there's obviously tons of great resources. We mentioned some. I have an app on my phone called Got Questions, which is fantastic. An app that answers these questions. And I have discussions with people all the time. My brother has a lot of different questions that we talk about, different back and forth. And there's people I know at work that we have questions. And I always like it when I'm challenged with something and I don't have a good answer for it, because I can actually tell the person that it's like, listen, that's a great question, and from my perspective, if you'll give me a day or so, I'll do some research and try to figure out why I believe that if the answer is whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay to do. We don't have to always have all the answers with us, but I think that it's being attacked. And from that perspective too, why is it being attacked, right? From someone who doesn't believe in God or Jesus or the Bible, what benefit does it do to them to say to attack a Christian who does believe in it? Right? So there's a force behind that attack, right? There's a force that's coming.
Otherwise, why attack it?
Right.
Yeah. So. I find it, as I was digging into this, and there's a blog post that you guys have read that I haven't published it yet, but I've been working on. But walking kind of through is, why is it important today, right? What is going on out there in today's society that the apologetics is becoming even more and more relevant, and why it's so important that we actively start teaching it. So, there's all kinds of statistics out there about people leaving the church, about how, especially in the youth category, one of the main reasons that they are leaving the church is because when they're asked these questions, it's like, why is there suffering? Why do we see all the suffering? Or
why did God let my grandma die?
Or it can even get as personal as that. Or how wasn't the Bible written by men? right? How can it be the inspired word of God, right? I mean, there's all kinds of these questions that they all have really good answers to, but we've just stopped kind of answering them as the church, or the answer we give them is, no, just trust in Jesus. That stuff all works out. Just trust in Jesus, but we're not getting the intellectual side of the need for the Christian faith answered. And I know, Josh, that was a big part of your story.
Absolutely.
With it, is that intellectual side was very important to you to be able to understand some of that, to be able to really internalize, to get to the point where we could say, well, yes, this is how we trust in Jesus.
Yeah, because to your point, and it was around that, kind of young teenage years where that analytic part of my mind was in full force, and I was asking questions. I was raised in a Christian family, but I didn't necessarily have answers that were being given to me that met my curiosity. Questions like what Terry said. It's like, well, how could all the animals fit on an ark? And even from that perspective, what is a cubit, and why does that, how does that translate in today's world? And those types of questions went unanswered for so many years.
Noah invented the Rubik's cubit.
Rubik's cubit.
I'm sorry.
No, that's a good one. I'll have to write that one down. But yeah, he, having not gotten the answers to those hard questions, and then still claiming to be a Christian, or believing that I was a Christian, and then going to my friends' groups, or even some of the other members in my family, they would turn the questions back on me, and when I wouldn't have an answer, all it did was chisel away at my faith over a period of time. And it really wasn't until I met you guys, and you gave me the hope, and really the reality that, no, there are real answers to this. Not fluffy answers, not we're twisting things to really make it sound good, but legitimate, founded in reality, science, archaeology answers. And as I started to dig into that more, it's not what gave me my faith, it's what gave me the ability to have confidence in my faith. And then that's what really, when we talk about the 1 Peter verse, realizing, well, I'm supposed to have that knowledge so that I have the confidence, so that I can go be a disciple and share the good word with other people.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about having the confidence in your faith, what you're really saying there is you're building your faith, you're increasing your faith.
Yes.
One of the big questions I had when I remember mentoring with the pastor was, says the Bible always talks about build your faith or increase your faith. It's like, what does that mean? I thought, it's faith is either you have it or you don't, but how do you build your faith? And that's exactly what apologetics is well, twofold, right? One of the missions of it is obviously to build our faith, right? Because faith is something that we want, that we're believing in, and that we have some sort of initial foundation for belief in that. Maybe that initial foundation is just, that's what our parents taught us. That's what I learned in Sunday school, right? That growing up, that's what I was taught. Maybe that's our initial foundation. But now, how do we build our faith, right? Because if you go out there and if you just live your life, that's like, my parents told me that this was true, well, guess what? At some point in your life, that's going to be challenged, right? And if you don't have some sort of foundational belief, or that you've built on, that if you increase that faith, then you're going to be that's when you're talking about people leaving the church, that kind of stuff. College universities are notorious for this, right?
Yep.
Of people, Christians, kids going into college, and they leave. It's some massive percentage, I don't know what it is, but it's a really high percentage of kids that come out and they're completely abandon their faith. And the other aspect of that too was when, Jeff, something you said is in order, we do it for ourselves to build our faith, but then also in defending the faith for these attacks or for these questions, right? If we think of it as attacks, it's probably a bad word to say, right?
I would say that intentionally, that we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, right, because that part of the, you're probably thinking about the part of the verse that says, is there's always a questioner behind the question.
That's something Ravi says, yeah?
That's something Ravi is and I love learning from the RZIM guys, because every question that they get, the very first thing they do is they address the questioner and they say, thank you for the question, or that's a great question, or I really see where you're coming from that from the question, because almost everybody who is on the attack against Christianity is coming from a personal space. They're coming from something in their life. Josh, you can probably remember something in your life that caused you to have some sort of like, whatever it was about, your search with it. I've had it too. It's like when in my search for answers, there's always something that you're thinking about or that you have an experience with. It's never just free thinking that, I'm going to go out and ask these questions just to be a jerk, right, or mean about it. There's always something personal about it.
Yeah, so that last part of that verse in 1 Peter 3:15, it literally says, yet do it with gentleness and respect, right? Which is exactly what you were trying to say there, that there is a big part of it. If we just go out there and defend, beat someone over the head with the right answers, that's not the point.
No.
Right? So we need to understand for ourselves why, but also be able to go back to the point that you made earlier, Terry, was we need to be able to have that conversation apologetics just out there in everyday life that as someone brings.
Well, and you probably, your personality versus Josh and I's, we're probably more of that. I want this relationship to continue so I can influence this guy. Your personality is, I'm going to beat this. Not beat this guy, but I'm going to win this battle.
I'm going to win this battle.
Check mark in my side of the column, right?
Yeah, so I do struggle with that 100%. I do, which is why I have to constantly be reminded of that last part of that verse, right?
Which I think is a strength of yours, because you're driven to have the right answers. Now you need to know how to hone them into the right.
Absolutely.
Whereas in Josh and I think we can tend to be a little wishy-washy and get pushed around a little bit more and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Because I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But we are getting close to ending here. As a matter of fact, we're a few minutes over of what we want to do. Any final thoughts on this? I mean, we've talked about apologetics, what it is, why it matters, a couple trends in today, how we should address it.
Yeah, Josh?
I think the question that I'd like to leave you with, I guess, is, do you know why you believe what you believe? Have you taken the time to really investigate it and be able to give a reason for why you have that belief? Not just for yourself, but if you've got kids, being able to have that example for them, but and your friends and your family. If your faith is real and it's living, do you have that answer? And I think you'll find that if you don't, being willing to pursue it is a fantastically fun journey.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
It's actually, there's a lot to it that you can win from it.
Yeah. And of course, we're not going to get into. We may get into more topics at some other point of just specifics, apologetics things. But if anybody has any questions about resources, email the blog, and we got tons of resources of stuff that we plug into and that we listen to and that kind of stuff. We'd be happy to share them with you. So,
okay.
Anyway,
that's it. With that, we'll say goodbye.
This is Jeff and Josh, and I'm Terry. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.